One of my favorite topics since the version 2.0 came out is to basically use this as a showcase for the noise that comes up in the cybersecurity industry. Maybe sounds a bit harsh, but talking about NIST cybersecurity framework, where we had a good version 1.0 and another version 1.1 with slight refinement, of course. Usually when frameworks are launched, this is what happens, that there's a first look from the mass of people and you have some kind of a crowd-funded knowledge exchange and everyone chips in some thoughts and there's a first revision. And usually I would say just keep it there, because that's when it hit the market, people looked at it and they gave their feedback and it wasn't incorporated in the slightly increased version 1.1. That's exactly how it's supposed to be, because if no one had a big major veto right or against this thing, then basically it was good enough. What a framework, and first of all, what a framework is used for. I mean, it's not necessarily a handbook that you can just follow the processes immediately. You have to think in your organizational range how you want to apply it. Do you want to carve out some policies out of it, or work instructions, or whatever you call it, some steps that people can actually follow, because you don't want to hit them with a framework and then they don't actually know what is the next best action they can do. So nevertheless, so the framework is that you don't forget any aspect of a certain topic. So to not forget any aspect of cybersecurity, the NIST framework is the easiest one to look at, because it has 5 major categories, which everyone somewhat can relate their work with. So here, just a few snippets from the actual areas, because I don't want to deep dive into every one of them. We can do that separately. But just to understand where it comes from, and it usually starts with identify. You have to know your assets, you have to know your business, as in process or methods, and you have to know related risks, because that's the whole reason why you're doing this. Why you're doing cybersecurity, because you want to avoid financial risk to your company. You want to reduce it, but to know what the financial risk is, you have to understand what your business is, because if you don't know what the business impact is, you also don't know how to quantify it. And obviously, only when you know what type of business function is covered, you also can associate assets with it that are also affected. Protect itself is then the actual activity of, let's say, applying cybersecurity methods and measures. I simplified it here to basically access control and removing vulnerabilities. Access control could be on the hardware, on the software, on the code, on the archives, everything. So technically the whole user and technical user interconnection with the applications. And vulnerabilities is also, it's not just talking about security testing or scanning, but it's, let's say, everything that is exploitable. And it could be also a business logic issue, which could also pose as a vulnerability. It's not always the known CVEs or things like that. The detection part, mainly, not limited to it. I mean, there's more fancy terms that fall into this. But logging and monitoring is the main thing, because if you can't log it, you can't monitor it. And it will be hard to design KPIs and thresholds and stuff like that. Responding, and there's a bit of a difference between respond and recover. Of course, respond is first what you do as a first step if you have an attack or intrusion or incident. I limited it here to communication, because that's the gist of it, because you have to find the right stakeholders, you have to get people moving, someone has to work on something. So even tickets being sent back and forth is communication. And for recover, we can talk about normal backup processes and restoration and failovers, but I would like to really narrow it down and say, actually, it's the business continuity. I mean, at the end of the day, business doesn't care if there was a backup, if it was recovered, if it was a failover. They just need to know if the lights are off today, how can I run my business? And what is still available to me? Can I print something? Can I do something? Can I what else can I do without IT? Worst case, if we've been taking ransom, for example. So business continuity is the essence. Backup and recovery, the normal physical exercise for IT. That's a side story, because sometimes you don't even need that, as long as you can ensure business continuity through workarounds, for example. So that was the framework, version 1.1, and everything was good. And you only had to decide, how do you want to work with this? Either you balance your maturity, that you say, oh, I think I'm doing a lot of identify, but maybe I'm not ready for recovery. Maybe I was too much thinking that I can detect fast and I can respond fast and nothing's going to happen to me. But maybe now I should start investing into recovery and balance a bit off, especially when I look at all my assets are increasing, my business becomes more complex, the risks are increasing due to threats. It's time for more recovery, or it's time for a new protection tool, because I can't handle the load anymore. So that was the thought behind balance the maturity between these 5 areas. Or should I go deep in a certain area and say, well, given my skills, given my nature of business, maybe my business is not really into confidentiality, that's not the main driver. Maybe availability is the stronger one. So therefore then business continuity and stuff like that is more important than actually even, it's equally important, but if you would have to do one thing only, you have to choose. So therefore, go deep in one area may help as well, depending on your business model. And for me, it was always very natural that you have to govern the whole thing in terms of RASIC, so that you know who's responsible for what, and you have a little strategy behind it that usually elaborates where you stand today and where you want to go, and obviously also to manage these areas and make it accessible and understandable for everyone, especially for bigger companies. Policies and instructions are essential, that people can read and follow, and you don't have to educate everyone from day one. Even though, to be honest, sometimes 100 pages policy lying around is less worth than maybe a 1-hour video training for each employee. But, well, personal opinion. Never mind. Opinion here in this case, what I would like to share is the version 2, that special function of govern function, is a typical overhead. I didn't even include it in the slide, because you can look for yourself what's in there. It's definitely where an overhead classified department had said, hey, where's our things that we do? Why is it all over the place? I want to have it special, because I think I need a separate area for this. So this is a classical thing, what usually happens 2.0. I don't like it. All the things have been covered before, and there's a few unspoken things that have to happen to make this work, to make this wheel turning. And it would be lame to say there should be a separate department or division for it. It should be done within these areas. Everyone should steer themselves. So if you want to be lean, and again, now I'm emphasizing again, stick to the version 1.1, because then you really have people working on the right areas, and you have to enable them to manage the area and say, what is the RASIC for recovery? Do I have a mini recovery strategy? The overarching strategy is that all the 5 areas have to be in place, as good as possible, as good as you can afford it, and as good as it should be to really protect your business. But every area should then decide how much budget they have, what can they do, what kind of policies they should set up, or what kind of other awareness campaigns they have to run. As I say, I sometimes don't believe, and policies have to be there, that you can always say, well, you should have read that because it wasn't a fine print, but do you rather want that, or do you want people consuming the information and really have it on top of their head at all the time? And I think the secondary is the second option is better, and therefore keep it simple, remove the overhead at this stage, and work on the actual things within the framework.